Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. Well, this morning we will be chatting with Ms. Nichole Vanderpool. She's the director of the Epilepsy Awareness Foundation of Trinidad and Tobago, and her handsome son is here with us, Mr. Ezekiel. Good morning. How are you all doing?
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So we are talking about Epilepsy Awareness Month. Tell us a little bit about how we go about creating awareness.
Okay, our foundation, the Seizure Awareness Foundation of Trinidad and Tobago, we're relatively new. We're just about 3 years old. What we do is we go into schools and places of interest, organizations, to teach about seizure first aid and epilepsy awareness.
All right. And how long has this organization been around?
2014.
All right.
Yes.
Now, tell us a little bit, if you were to actually define a seizure, what's the definition?
Okay, a seizure is basically a brief temporary disturbance in the electrical impulses of the brain. Epilepsy, however, is characterized by recurrent, unprovoked seizures. So they are different, but yet still connected. We have non-epileptic seizures. There are many reasons why people can have seizures that aren't related to epilepsy. So if your blood pressure level, for instance, goes too high, you can have a seizure. If your blood sugar level goes too high, children are prone to having febrile, what we call febrile seizures. That's when they have very high fevers. So there are many reasons why people have seizures that are not epilepsy related.
So is it difficult or easy to identify someone who's actually experiencing a seizure?
Not always, because seizures can be either generalized or partial. With partial seizures, sometimes it's very difficult to even diagnose or to recognize. It would take a very observant parent or teacher or friend to realize that somebody is having a, let's say, an absent seizure, which can be mistaken for a daydream.
And also someone would need to know what the symptoms are.
Definitely.
So tell us a little bit about the symptoms. So before you do so, I'd just like to bring Mr. Eiffel into the conversation. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine today.
Now, I understand that you have experienced seizures in the past.
Yes.
Could you share some of your experiences? At what age did you realize that you suffered from seizures?
Well, I started being epileptic at the age of 6, right? And, well, in my life, things are kind of challenging, right? I take medication, and the medication I take is Epilim and Tegretol, right? Well, I have people that help me, right? And, well, sometimes when the seizure happen, sometimes if I standing too long, right, I can end up falling, right? But like I say, people help me, right? I have my mother who helps me. I have my sister, right? She helps me. And even when I'm in school, right, I have people that I can trust, right? The teachers are very helpful, right? And even when we are in school and having
lunch or something?
Yeah.
Break time?
Yeah. Or even assembly.
Okay.
Right? Like I say, people are helpful, right? They will let me sit down,
Yes.
just in case, because we don't know when the seizure will happen, right? It can happen at any point in time. So they will tell me to sit down, right? That's to show that they are helpful, right? And like I say, it's challenging, right? And it will feel kind of drowsy, dizzy kind of way.
Yes.
Right? And I can end up falling at any time. So I will sometimes even when I'm alert, right, and I know what's going on, I'll tell my mother or anybody who's around that is happening, and they will tell me to sit.
Now, what are some of the triggers? What do you think triggers your seizures most times?
What can trigger it is if I don't have a good rest, right? If I don't sleep properly, if the place is too hot, that can cause it to happen. If I don't eat, and if I stress out for myself, sometimes people tell me to calm yourself, right? Those kind of things.
All right, but you seem to be doing pretty well in terms of being able to function well at school with your friends and teachers.
Yes.
And you would say that they are very much aware and they are very accepting and helpful So
Yes.
you've not really had much problems where that is concerned.
No.
So in terms of awareness, would you say that we are, a learned society when it comes to seizures and epilepsy?
No, not really.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that is not the case. A lot of people still think that epilepsy is something that happened in the 19th century, the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
And so that they still think that it can't happen today. We as a foundation, what we do is we tend to want to go and dispel some of the myths still and the misconceptions still attached with seizures and epilepsy. So a lot of people aren't aware of what to do in case they see somebody having a seizure. They're still very, very scared when something happens like a tonic-clonic seizure. What we call a tonic-clonic seizure is a convulsive seizure. So when somebody sees someone having a tonic-clonic seizure, it can be scary, and they tend to run away. There are different reactions. Some people, their first reaction is to want to help, but they help by saying, put something in their mouth, hold them down, and these are very, very dangerous things to do. By putting something in their mouth, you're going to block their airway, and they're already trying to grasp as much air as they can. Some people turn blue after having a tonic-clonic seizure because of lack of oxygen. So this is what we do. We go in and we do seizure first aid, which is very, very important. In the event that you do have to give this person over to the emergency personnel, we want that person to be in a good state when you do so. We as parents of children with epilepsy, we don't have the option to run away. We don't have the option. We have to stay and fight and advocate on behalf of the child, on behalf of the person who's having the seizure.
All right, I'd like to talk quickly about the do's and don'ts, because
Sure.
I think the public needs to know definitely what do you do, what do you don't do.
Okay, the do's definitely. Do help and stay calm, because once you know what to do, you can help, you can assist. Do not put anything in the mouth of somebody who's having a seizure. If they are wearing scarves or neckties, try to loosen it, because the jerking can cause it to get even tighter. Do not try to hold them down. Limbs can pop out like that. Ezekiel has had shoulder dislocations because of falls associated with tonic-clonic seizures. So these are things that can happen as well. If this is their first seizure, please take them to the ER. If they have fallen, hit their head, please take them to the ER. If it's their first seizure, call an ambulance, because it's better to be safe than sorry.
All right, and also I understand if they are close to large objects, you try to remove them.
Certainly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Move any
That's
objects that
important.
they can fall on or hit themselves on.
And I'm seeing that you also roll them on the other side as soon as
Certainly. As soon as the seizure is subsiding, you turn them in the recovery position, which is the left side. And some people, they froth at the mouth or they vomit when they have a seizure. So it's important as well to engage their neck so that the drooling wouldn't go back in their throat and choke them or anything like that.
All right, and also the first aid recovery position that allows them to breathe easily.
Yes, to breathe a
Yes.
lot easier.
And that is
yes.
very, very important.
Very, very important.
And we're not aware of what we should do. So an important question is, how do we identify seizures? What signs do we look for?
With the absent seizures, you look for that blank stare. That stare, and they're not responsive. So if you pass your hand in front of their eyes like that, they're just still staring. But with the absent seizure, they can come back and continue a conversation, but not knowing what just happened. So that would be an absent seizure. With the focal dyscognitive seizures, they can wander off, pick at their clothes, bite their tongue, that sort of things. With the convulsive seizure, you can't help but notice that this person is having a rigid, tonic-clonic convulsive seizure, and they're definitely going to fall if not assisted. So you try to assist them and to avoid them falling to the ground. And this is where the first aid, the seizure first aid comes in. Release anything tight from their neck. If they're wearing glasses, please remove it. All the things. Remove any sharp objects or any objects. Remove people. Ask people to give you some space. Give them some space. Please don't put anything in their mouth to obstruct their airway. And if in doubt, call the ambulance. If this person is a known epileptic, what you do is you give them a place to rest afterwards, because they're going to be a bit confused as to where they are. Probably they're going to have headaches, and some people they just go right to sleep. So you can offer them a safe place to rest as well.
Now, Ezekiel, you said that your first seizure occurred when you were 6 years old, correct?
Yeah, the epileptic seizure.
Yeah, the epileptic seizure. Now, tell us a little bit about the ages in terms of people who probably think they may not ever suffer from seizures, and how is it caused?
In about 70% of the cases of people with epilepsy, they fall into a category known as unknown. They just don't know why the seizure happens. Other causes would be trauma to the head, which is a main
injury.
Yes, brain injury, encephalitis, lupus, meningitis, other spectrums like autism, CP, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis. These also present with seizures.
And how many different types? As you mentioned a lot, quite a lot. How many different types of seizures are there?
On the spectrum, there are over 40 types of epileptic seizures. We have also photosensitivity epilepsy, where lights would affect them, flashing lights like discos or from handheld games, arcade games, stuff like that. Even sometimes traffic lights. So these occur in about 5% of epileptic people. It's said that over 42,000 people in Trinidad and Tobago live with epilepsy. Some of them are closeted because of the stigma, the discrimination attached to the disorder. So they prefer, if their seizures are controlled, if they prefer not to tell anybody, which can be something dangerous as well. Some people have nocturnal epilepsy. It only happens at night, so there's no need to tell anyone, you know. So there are many hormonal changes can cause epileptic seizures as well.
Now, you did mention it's kind of difficult to diagnose.
Yes.
So how do doctors go about doing it? Is it a brain scan?
Definitely. CT scan, MRI, but the first one would be an EEG, which is an electroencephalogram. It's a test where you attach electrodes to the head, and it measures the electrical activity of your brain. This is how Ezekiel was diagnosed. He had an EEG, and they did pick up some anomalies in the left side of his brain. So that's when he was diagnosed as having epilepsy.
Well, closing comments, what do you have to say to the general public, those looking on? And you did mention that stigma is an issue.
Definitely. We at the Seizure Awareness Foundation of Trinidad and Tobago, this is what we want to do. We want to dispel some of the myths and misconceptions associated with seizures. We believe that this can only be done through education. One, our vision is to have an educated public, an educated Trinidad and Tobago, one that will be able to put practices in place to assist somebody with epilepsy, whether it's at school, whether it's an organization, because as I said, the statistics are astounding. It's 1 in 34 people in Trinidad and Tobago, so that's a lot of people. So everyone is affected, teachers, in every sphere. So we want to create a seizure smart Trinidad and Tobago, and by doing so even have more medications available, because as it stands, we only have about 6 types of medications available. So we want to have new medicines and an epileptologist even to help us to spread the awareness.
Ms. Vanderpool, Mr. Eiffel, thank you so much for being part of our show. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yeah.
News is up next, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Well, I'm Vinna Barr. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's definitely a pleasure having you on board with us. News is up next. Stay tuned.